Okay, we can begin this evening's work session for Monroe City Council. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hickman.
Present.
Mr. Hagedorn.
Here.
Ms. McElfresh. Present. Mr. Funk.
Here.
Mr. Graves. Mr. Brown.
Here.
Ms. Floyd.
Present.
Thank you.
Should I make a motion
Oh,
to excuse?
yeah, we can.
Okay, I move to excuse Mr. Graves from this meeting.
Have a motion, may I have a second? Second. Motion and second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Larry, I'll turn it over to you for discussion.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, members of council. I have a presentation this evening. It will be about 20 to 25 minutes. This is a follow-up to the combined meeting that we had with Monroe School District and Lemon Township recently. The data contained in the presentation really follows the city's growth beyond the 2019 comprehensive plan. Seth also provided some demographics, some workforce data that we'll be reviewing. And in a previous meeting, Mr. Hagedorn mentioned a moratorium or limit on permits or cap on permits. So when I use the word moratorium, limit, or cap, those are all the same meaning. With that, Monroe continues to grow, but our growth remains measurable and manageable. Building permits are only one indicator of future population and service demands for any municipality. Tonight's discussion focuses on recent permit trends since 2019, growth data, and policy considerations for council. Staff will conclude with a recommendation regarding the request for permit limitations or moratoria. The purpose of this presentation is to review residential permit activity and growth trends in the city over the last 7 years. We'll start by examining demographics, workforce data, and housing data. We'll discuss existing commercial development guardrails that are currently in place and evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of a moratorium. And finally, staff will present a recommendation for council consideration. The Monroe 2040 plan anticipated approximately 85 permits annually. Prior to 2019, the city was processing about 80 permits per year, and the plan recommended a slight increase to hit population projections of just over 20,000 residents by 2040. Since 2019, the city has averaged about 55 permits a year, so we, over the last 7-year period, have been underperforming on our comprehensive plan by about 30 permits per year on the residential side. Our actual growth remains well below the long-term planning assumptions that were made in the comprehensive plan. Current development activity does not indicate excessive residential growth over the last 7-year period. Monroe demographics help us understand who lives in the city and helps us inform future growth decisions. Demographic trends that the city monitors includes housing, schools, workforce availability, and city services. The data shows a community that is heavily oriented toward families. The next slide looks at our age distribution for demographics. Nearly 30% of Monroe residents are children or teenagers. Young adults or working professional populations remain relatively small. As you'll note, 2.7% of our population is age 25 to 29. So we look at the workforce and within that age group, those are folks who are returning from college and working in some kind of professional or career-oriented setting. And then 19.6% of our population is age 45 to 59. The demographic profile for Monroe remains consistent with a suburban family-oriented community. Growth continues to support long-term population stability. Demographic trends do not suggest unusual population pressures. Next slide, please. Workforce development availability is increasingly important for any city's economic growth. Communities that attract and retain working age residents remain competitive in the region and state. Housing availability and affordability play key roles in workforce development. And as you look at this slide with workforce development, we have 442 of our residents who are employed and live within the city of Monroe. And within that demographic, about 125 or so are the age 21 through 29 that we discussed prior. 25 through 29, excuse me. Workforce trends indicate continued demand for housing options and types. Employers increasingly compete for talent across the Southwest Ohio region. Maintaining housing opportunities supports future workforce needs. Housing diversity. Housing diversity helps meet the needs of residents at different stages of life. We talked about the young professional having a housing type for young professionals, young adults, and also the 55 plus community. We discussed that in previous meetings, how there's a need in the city for 55 plus housing to have generational opportunities for residents. A balanced housing stock supports economic growth and community stability. Housing choices contribute to workforce attraction and retention. Monroe must offer a variety of housing types and price points. Continued housing diversity supports families, young working professionals, and older residents. Limiting the housing supply can reduce future housing flexibility. One item that was mentioned at a previous council meeting was commercial development. So staff wanted to list and point out the commercial development guardrails that the city currently has in place. We already have strong tools to guide commercial growth throughout the city through our zoning regulations and council-directed initiatives that shape development outcomes. Existing code provisions limit certain uses along key corridors throughout the city, and commercial growth is already managed through established policy. So this leads to the second part of our presentation. What is a moratorium? A moratorium is a temporary pause on development approvals or permits. It is generally used when a community faces infrastructure or planning concerns. Moratoria are intended as temporary tools, not permanent controls to guide growth. Why cities use moratoria? Communities typically use moratoria when infrastructure cannot support growth. They may also be used during planning stages or regulation updates. The purpose of a moratorium is to address a specific problem, not stop growth altogether. Strategic purpose through a public sector lens, moratoria can help align growth with infrastructure capacity. They allow communities time to plan before problems become costly. The key question is whether such conditions currently exist in the city. Pros of a moratorium. A moratorium can provide time for studies and planning. It may protect infrastructure capacity and service levels. Moratoriums can also prevent rush development before regulations are updated. The primary benefit is to gain time to evaluate current conditions. Cons of a moratorium. Moratoriums can increase housing costs by reducing supply throughout the city. They may discourage investment and delay economic development. Growth may simply shift to neighboring communities. Moratoriums can also negatively affect relationships with the development community. Economic impacts. Short-term impacts include reduced construction activity and delayed investment. Long-term impacts can include higher housing costs and slower tax-based growth. Council, as a body, must weigh economic consequences against potential benefits related to moratoriums. Financial impacts to the city. A moratorium may reduce permit, utility, and income tax revenues. A moratorium could also delay future infrastructure expenditures. The financial question is whether cost avoidance outweighs lost revenue. Legal framework regarding moratoriums. Moratoria are generally legal when supported by a legitimate public purpose. They must be temporary, reasonable, and supported by evidence. Infrastructure or public safety concerns are the most common justifications for moratoria. Legal risk. Moratoria can create legal exposure if not properly justified. Courts evaluate duration, economic impact, and public purpose. Documentation and factual support are critical throughout this process. Legal considerations in Ohio. Ohio courts generally require documented infrastructure deficiencies. A city must identify both the problem and the path forward towards a resolution. Moratoria cannot be indefinite and must be temporary in nature. Best practices for policy design. Successful moratoria are limited in duration and narrowly tailored. They clearly define scope, objectives, and expected outcomes. Any pause should be tied to specific studies or deliverables. One question that I received is what would be the budgetary cost of such studies to explore a moratorium within specific areas throughout the city. And this would require a thorough technical analysis, which typically studies traffic, water, sewer, stormwater for the city, depending on the size and scope of these type of studies, whether that is areas, defined areas within the city or a specific quadrant or part of the city. The budgetary number for the cost of these studies is somewhere in the range of $650,000 to $1.35 million, depending on the footprint, the size of the area, the utilities within the areas that are being studied, and the scope of those studies. Those studies would typically need to be done by a consultant who specializes in each of those areas of infrastructure or utility. Council should consider whether current conditions justify this type of investment, which would affect our general fund and capital budget. Key decisions for council. The central question is whether a problem currently exists. Is infrastructure constrained today? What outcome would council expect from a permit limitation? And are the cost and risks justified by the anticipated benefit of this decision? Staff offers two recommendations, one for residential and a second for commercial. Looking at the data and the trends over time, our current permit issuance on the residential side is closely aligned with school enrollment projections. The school is projecting moderate growth over the next decade, and we've given the schools all of our approved development or subdivisions, and also anything that is a potential, and they've ran that through their enrollment model. And the recommendation from their consultant at the combined meeting is for the city to stay the course and continue doing what we're doing. Two measures that they recommended as a community that we keep a close eye on is this 220 number for annual home sales, which is a combination of new and existing combined. Staff continues to watch that, and then the 30-year fixed mortgage rate, as long as that rate is between 3 and 8%, the enrollment projection model will continue to run as it is proposed. And we're really looking at trends that go plus or minus 20% of that model. Currently, I'm seeing 30-year fixed rates of about 6.5%, and those have been relatively stable over time. So we're really looking at that 8 number to see if the rates go up or down based on the current rate. So staff does not recommend a residential moratorium permit limitation or cap at this time. The current permit activity remains well below planned projections that were done in 2019. Existing monitoring tools that we have provide adequate oversight, and the market is self-regulating, operating within these metrics. Staff recommends continued monitoring of the housing market conditions and the school enrollment trends to make sure that we are meeting the projections in the 2040 comp plan and the school enrollment projections that were provided by the consultant. And then on the commercial side, staff does not recommend any type of moratorium for commercial development in the city. Our existing zoning and development tools that are already in place provide the effective guardrails that we need as a community. Maintaining flexibility within the commercial development side helps us attract quality commercial investment, which is vital for the city's long-term economic growth and sustainability. Staff recommends continuing to evaluate projects on a case-by-case basis. Staff will continue to vet those projects before they come to council for consideration. Based on permit activity, demographic trends, housing data, and current infrastructure conditions, staff does not find sufficient evidence to support a residential or commercial moratorium at this time. We will continue to monitor and utilize our existing planning and zoning tools to manage growth responsibly. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Any discussion from council or anything that jumped out on you in the presentation?
Yes. Sorry. Are you sure?
The legal considerations, how does that, like, I'm trying to think of the right words. We have a right to home rule, right? To govern ourselves, be making any decisions somehow. So how does that tie in with these legal issues? Do you understand?
I do. Jack can speak in more depth. So typically at a very high level, it was mentioned in the past a longer duration of perhaps 2 or 3 years, but typically moratoriums are done on a short-term basis.
Right.
6-9 months are very common. Jack can speak to any case law that exists.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that ultimately it's kind of weighing the city's home rule authority with the property owner's rights, so that's really what that issue is getting at, is if we're gonna restrict the property owner's rights to do something on their property, is there a legitimate justification for that? And that's where, do the study is just, hey, there's a strain on certain infrastructure here. We need to make some restrictions in this certain area or in a larger area so that we can address those concerns, so that we're not overburdening our system. And that kind of provides a legitimate objective rationale for why we're restricting property owner's rights.
That makes sense.
And that ties into also why moratoriums can't be indefinite. who monitors renewals of moratoriums when a 6, 9 or month or 12-month window is expired? How does it come back as, should we renew this, or does it fall into a gray space and we can be unaware that the moratorium has ended?
Typically, you establish how long it's gonna be.
Right, and then it
And then I
ends.
think you might assess, before it ends, you know, you might assess and say,
But,
there's a need, this problem has not been resolved, so it's.
But
gonna
who's
be-
monitoring when it ends?
I think the city would, yes, city staff
But,
would.
but, you know, there's turnover, you know, like, is there a ledger that says here are existing moratoriums? If there's council turnover, if there's staff turnover, et cetera, how would we know what is on deck for expiring? I mean, Beth, for example, is monitoring our Civic Plus renewals, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
who's responsible for moratorium renewals or non-renewals?
Administration would be responsible.
I think she's looking for a
Looking for a
department.
Tighten up.
No closer.
Who?
Like, would that be
Person.
development?
It would be development.
Okay.
And, you know, the development community would obviously want to know that as well.
Right. Because I think that has to come back around. I'm thinking high level, any decisions about dispensaries, and that current moratorium was made before my involvement. I don't know what resolution number that is. I don't know exactly when it ends, who does, who would be responsible for evaluating if the need still exists, bringing it back before council. These are,
Development.
and to that end, are they watching?
Which I think so, and I say that because we later passed legislation. So by placing the moratorium, it put other things in motion. We did it because we needed to make sure it wasn't too concentrated in certain areas. We changed our zoning to account for that, so now the moratorium can run its course, expire, and it should be a non-issue.
Should be.
Right, but that wouldn't fit our zoning,
What
so.
is per zone?
Right.
Per zone.
That doesn't apply to every moratorium. I guess I'm just still trying to make sure that we have a workflow in place for others that may exist now or in the future. Yes, it works for the dispensary one, but I don't know. Do we have other moratoria that's currently in place?
You know,
When was that?
for-
It's been over a year.
Oh, yeah, it was before the state came out with the guidelines, and that was the other part of it.
Yeah.
We didn't know what those guidelines were gonna be.
My point is, he just gave us 6 months to a year,
it's
and I
different.
guarantee it's been
It has
3
been.
years, probably. It's- So, moratorium should be off.
Right.
But they're
Should
saying
be.
but they're saying our zoning
No,
umbrella
I
isn't
know.
enough.
That's,
Gave us time to
my
put that
point
zoning in
is
place.
you got a moratorium, you just said we had one moratorium, but yet it's been, let's say, 3 years. So we shouldn't have one. That's my point.
Right, yeah, we don't, as the mayor mentioned, it's.
You just said we did. We had one moratorium.
Had.
Didn't say had.
Yeah, we'll chalk it up to poor choice of words. I think, is what we're saying. Understanding that we can't get in the way of landowners' rights, but also that what gets sold could get away from us quickly, in my belief. I mean, when we think about the potential development that was proposed for Todd Hunter and 698 Road, the 62 acreage that we had a lot of community participation for, with asking that not be put into place. We have the project that's going in off behind Clubhouse Sports Grill. We don't know what else could be sold in the future. That could get away from us quickly. Are we sure that we have the proper guardrails to prohibit the phases not phasing annually the way that we want them to? Because I think that between moratorium and zoning, we're vulnerable. We still have a lot of opportunity for attached housing, townhomes, high-density housing in land areas where it's currently green space. And I don't feel that between the zoning and the absence of moratorium that we are well protected from a housing boom and development that could get away from us. That would be my piece on residential. Does anyone have any other notes on residential before I say my piece on commercial?
So basically what brought this on, in my opinion, or where it came from, obviously with a new school, it's going to bring growth. We went through this the last time. I was part of the new growth when the school was built. It's part of, we didn't necessarily move here for the school, but it was a great feature to have a new school and be a separate school district. My fear, again, we have a really strong and very good school district that I don't see it falling apart anytime in the near future. With some of the potential of these lands have been sold and potential of development, some of it's already apartments that have been approved. It's going to bring massive growth, and I don't think anyone is thinking other than what the studies say, that it's going to be this kind of growth. They weren't prepared for the last growth that came in, and we overcrowded the school within a short period of time, and then it's continued to happen. I don't want to see that happen again. That's partially what had brought all of this on. And then the other thing that came up because of the new school building, we discovered we don't have enough water flow for the school building. What other areas have we not looked at that potentially have infrastructure problems where these developments may or may not come? Who's going to pay for these? What is the plan for all of this? That's partially what has spurred all of this on to put either a limit or a moratorium, whatever you want to call it. I'm not looking at doing anything other than what's up there in existence, but we kind of enforce it and slow down and take care of what we need to do before we get into this situation where we're spending $4 million to put a water line in so we can build a school. What if we approve these neighborhoods and then we find out other things? We're gonna have to go further into debt to have water lines, sewers, or road improvements that we don't necessarily have the money for. That's where I'm looking at wanting to have some sort of slow down on it, or we hit a limit of what we can and cannot do. That is what brought this on to me. I don't want to be part of the problem of a new school building being overcrowded because we have these developments that may or may not happen. People are anxious to get into a good school district. They don't want their kids to be a number like they are at some of these other districts where they're not getting the education from their district and would like to move into something new, or to move into a city that is up and coming with potential of growth of things that we can and cannot provide for them. So, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword that we have a nice community, we have a great school that people can move into, and I think that with some of these larger developments that may happen, that's what's going to happen.
And I mean, I think your approach, your assessment is very thoughtful. The thing that strikes me is with the school, technically, we're not responsible for that water line. And when these new developments come in, whether it's a neighborhood or a new business, those negotiations happen. They need a wider road. They need to pay for a wider road. If they need water, they need to pay for water. So it's not always on our shoulders. I think that was something that we as council had discussed, that we would take that as our water system.
We're paying for the improvements on Butler Warren Road for the new neighborhood down there. They didn't pay for that upgrade in the water line, we are. So there's one development already that we're in debt for.
Yeah, I don't know what the entire agreement is with that developer, but a lot of times it's a give and take.
They only paid, the city only paid an upsized charge. So in a situation like Stony Brook, it was required that they would need to run an 8-inch line all the way down Butler Warren Road from Mason Road into the subdivision. We wanted it to be a 12-inch to help serve the rest of that land. We paid the difference between 8 and 12. So we only paid that upsized charge.
So that if any future development happened along that road, we were already set.
We were already set.
Got
it. And that's typically the way those developments would go. But, you know, I guess from the school perspective, what I brought to council was that you know, school is not it's not a residential subdivision. I mean, it's really, it's a commercial building. And even though it's for education, it's a commercial building. And our system, as it was installed in the area where the school was built later on, it's just not, the capacity of the system was not there. It's not that we don't have the volume of water, it's just we didn't have the capacity to get that volume of water there. And so, you know, I look at that as, you know, the city has to invest back in their infrastructure at some point, and that was one of those situations where you have a main, any main that we're touching as part of that project is at minimum 50 years old, at a minimum. Most of it's 60 plus years old. And so 60 plus years ago, it was never thought or dreamed of that you would need a 12-inch line to feed a school sitting on that hill. So, I mean, those things change over the course of time. So, I mean, you know, typically in these subdivisions, we pay for very little. You know, with Stony Brook, we paid for very little of any, within the subdivision, we paid no infrastructure. Only the upsize charge, you know. Now, Project Clear, there's some other things going on there with roadway improvements, right? But like, it's typically going to be, with residential subdivisions, it's pretty much always on the development.
And just to add on for the, you know, overburdening the school district itself, I think that's why we've been collaborating with their consultant especially. And as Larry put it, if they're telling us stay the course with your current development plan, that means they're anticipating maybe a slight drop off in enrollment. And if they don't have the enrollment, that means other fees are gonna go up because that's lost revenue for them. And it's not always gonna be perfect. I mean, we may get a boom, it may be a bust, and they may end up in financial trouble, who knows? But I don't want it to come at our hand because we're guessing going a route other than what the experts are telling us.
I still think we're in a danger zone between the zoning and no moratorium. There just are not enough guardrails. I mean, when we look at, you know, the plan projection is 80 permits per year. We are doing significantly below our target. We just approved 300 or 600 rather some units for that property behind Clubhouse. We don't know what's in the pipeline for that. On paper, that looks good because it's phased building, so it's not like we're approving 600 permits at once. So we're still staying on target with our annual projections, but we don't know what other land's going to be sold. We don't know what other housing developments are coming. We also have, I don't want to plan for anyone's demise, but with 10% of our demographic 70 years or over, they're likely to stop aging or have some other reason to no longer be in their home. So we're going to have existing homes available for turnover, and a lot of the demographic is no impact to the school. So that's going to continue to bring in people who are probably seeking out the school. So I don't see any issue feeding the school in that way. I just think that if we are not cautious now, 5 years from now, we have every green space with 600 plus units on it in some way or another. The Advancement Road 2040 plan allows for a lot of density. It allows for more than one home within a half-acre plot because of attached homes and a lot of the green space that exists right now. And I'm not saying that I align in not having a moratorium because we don't really have a right to do it, but in that event, then I don't think that the zoning is tight enough. I think that we have too much vulnerability.
Are we going to at least enforce the 2040 comprehensive plan that said 85 total? That's the recommendation. I'm not hearing anything that we're gonna do that. I mean, that's what I'm looking at, is I just want some sort of number, so it's not, oh, we're gonna build 200 homes this year. Between the stuff that's approved behind Clubhouse and the stuff that's approved off of Route 4, that's 850 units, if I'm not mistaken.
That's what
I
I'm
know
saying,
it's
is it looks
planned to be
really
full
good on
development,
permit
but-
paper, but there's a lot floating out there.
We don't have very many apartments available once apartments hit the market, I think they're going to be gobbled up. How quick are they gonna run through that? If they're selling and renting them, who's to say the explosion doesn't happen with that?
How does that work with the permits for apartments? Each individual unit a permit, or is it the whole building is one?
Building is one.
Okay.
And
Even
those
even
keep in,
scarier.
keep in mind those streets within a multifamily community for profit.
Right.
Similar to a condominium type community.
I have a quick question. Seth, this is for you. Did you get the data for this? Were you the one in charge of obtaining the demographic data?
Demographic data came from census data.
Okay. Well, my question,
Surveys or.
okay. My question was, the older demographic that we have, does that include Mount Pleasant? Because they're still have voting rights, and they're still, so they're residents, but they're already in, they're not, selling a house, so they're already where they are.
In general, it's really hard to sell a house and buy a house in downsides right now, especially if there's nowhere to do it. That's convenient. And that's one of the issues. So they might not be leaving those houses as fast as you think they are unless they're leaving Monroe.
Or they've already left them.
Or they've already left.
That's what
And then you have the older, it's ones getting 65 that are still working. When they stop working, are they gonna sell their house for other people to live in? That's why they have to have 200 sold or built homes. The sold homes are probably not quite there. I would have that data up at 1.2 now.
And so some of the guardrails that aren't necessarily visible or as visible, because I've seen projects or interested parties come forward. Every project that comes, they come with an ask. They ask for, I don't know, a roadway or sewers, or they ask for us to bend on the aesthetics. And it's like, that's a guardrail. We just say no. And they're like, okay, we can't be profitable. And because I think, I don't know what conversations I've had in executive session.
But those
I know,
those
I
sorts
know.
of decisions, what I'm particularly sensitive to new in my city council seat is that a lot of those items come down the pipeline early in planning commission. They get approved at planning commission, and then by the time they're truly in front of us as a council, we are opening the city to litigation if we don't agree with it. So I'm trying to communicate now. I don't agree with a lot of what comes to us by the time it gets to us at council, because there aren't enough guardrails to guide planning commission at the time of making their decisions. And so if it continues to come down the pipeline, then we continue to put me, maybe others, in a position where we are forced to make us vulnerable to litigation because we didn't have enough early guardrails for development that we didn't align with. And to that end, in the interest of time, I want to segue quickly to commercial. I still feel very strongly about commercial moratorium for specific business segments. I think it is, forgive me, a no-brainer for specific businesses like car washes, tire and auto shop, gas stations, etc. I understand that we believe that we have a guardrail saying that gas stations and car washes can't have frontage along certain corridors. The use shall not be located on a lot with frontage along Ohio State 63, Ohio State Route 4, or Cincinnati Dayton Road you got those. And we continue to fall to critique for businesses that met those guidelines, but we're a gas station, we're a tire or car place, we're a car wash. And when people see ground getting broken and they find out that it is one of those segments, they are disappointed in us generally as a municipality, because it's another one after a long list of already existing similar business types. So I have a list beyond the gas station, the car wash, and the tire and car place, and we see the trend over and over again. And I think that there is probably great precedence for this, Jack. I saw this, city of Dayton, in the last year, they came out and said they were doing an indefinite moratorium on self-storage. Why? Because it didn't meet their goals of having foot traffic and reasons to come downtown. Self-storage didn't create reasons to be a community, and so they went indefinite moratorium on self-storage. I think that we are at a cap with certain business types, and without those guardrails in place, we had a gas station breaking ground at Lot N63 that, as a city council member, I had to ask what was going in there, because it didn't have to go through any type of zoning approval because it was already approved because of the zoning. And I feel, I hope Wawa will forgive me, I'm comfortable saying this because it is my personal opinion. I think that the density of a Wawa at Lot in 63, while there is also one going in at 741 and 63, is too much. We didn't need two within that few mile range. So we don't have guardrails. We need to prevent duplicitous, help me, anyway, too many of the same type of business. So I feel very strongly about the commercial moratorium piece for certain business segments.
So our zoning, I have I needed some clarification because that made me think about this question right here. So we have, our zoning does not allow, correct, for gas stations on 63, Route 4, right?
I just read it. It
I
doesn't allow
know,
for frontage, yeah.
I'm reiterating.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So how did the Wawa go in?
Wawa was not long.
Sorry, no, it does have frontage on 63. It was already in progress.
Play.
Right.
Okay, all right, that was
when
my
we
question,
passed
so,
that, yeah.
you know, if
so-
we have this language, but yet there's Wawa, how do you think?
And like I'm thinking about community critique, the last car wash was the Ohana car wash down by Thornton's. Like it also is not directly at facing 63, so it probably went around that guardrail, if I had to assume.
So that one also has frontage on 63. The issue with, and the trouble with things coming out of the ground is permitting usually, commences a year and a half, 2 years, even sometimes prior to anyone noticing that something's happening. So that was the same with Ohana. To be honest, that particular car wash had been in the works since 2019.
It had.
That one took forever for
Different reasons.
reasons.
I want to be respectful. I want on record. I don't hate Ohana or Wawa, and I hope everyone continues to patron them. But this kind of serves my point. And I'm so sorry, Jake. I will always be Mr. Burton. I'm sorry. But this kind of proves my point that there aren't the right guardrails to prevent us just becoming gas station city, car wash city. We're already known as dispensary city. Heaven forbid if there was a competitor of Hustler that decided to break ground somewhere, we would just all burn. I think they're telling me it's banned, but you get my point that there are another sandwich shop or another donut shop. Like in a lot of ways that leads us to not foster the existing businesses we have. And it's one point of my passion is because I want our community members to be excited about new developments and commercial buildings that are coming here because people beg for reasons to spend their money and keep tax revenue within the limits of Monroe. But also because when we continue to allow for competition, it's not fostering the relationships and the longevity of the businesses we already have that are the same type. And I want to continue to have those original businesses to feel like they have an ownership within Monroe's community, and we continue to deplete their stakehold within Monroe.
Well, from an economic development standpoint, it changes a lot as you approach the interstate because of all the transient traffic. I mean, you talk sandwich shops, you got Jimmy John's, Jersey Mike's, now we got Izzy's. I mean, all within a quarter mile of each other. It's like, and a Subway. But those are big companies. They do their market research. They know they can all survive in that environment, and the numbers obviously support it. So the last thing we would want to do is also restrict businesses that also now put burdens on our residents because they're like, I can't go get a sandwich. I'll wait for an hour because there's 100 people in the line.
Which is why moratoriums are open for reevaluation, which is why we just decided to come up with a reason to look at when they're expiring. I think that, again, because we don't have any control over capitalism and how people sell their land and where they go and who they go to and how quickly those things come down the pipeline, we are in control of what the look and the feel of the city of Monroe is, and we have a responsibility to all of those residents. I mean, I understand that we have to employ the persons who are age 25 to 29, and we need things for all of these different demographics. But by putting in a moratorium, we're simply asking for a little bit more creativity with the types of businesses that are coming in. And they can follow suit with the sandwich shops who have done their market research and bring a different business type to us. And I think that that's really our burden, is to kind of say enough is enough on certain segments, and then start working towards developing relationships with other business types that can continue to be food service, beverage service, whatever we think is kind of tangential to that business type. Thank you.
Got legislation you want to talk about?
I do, I just have one item. So the last meeting I mentioned lending library.
Mr. Bergman.
I did receive a letter from the lending library asking for renewal. That's a 5-year renewal, not a 3. So I'll be working on that and bringing that to council on a future agenda. Lending library?
Yes, that's the one,
By the community room.
Seasto,
by
Portland. Oh,
by
by
community
IG.
room.
Okay.
Yes.
By
Yeah, I'm
Monroe
sorry.
Stairs.
All right.
IG, or
We got so many
whatever that
libraries.
is. Gas station.
Not a Maristop.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Burton, I'm sorry, I cut you off several
Yeah,
times.
I just wanted to add one comment to the multifamily discussion. Just to be clear, because, as the finance guy, I learn all this stuff along the way too. So when something gets approved at planning commission, it could then definitely happen, right? And then it gets approved by city council, it could certainly move forward from that point. But in the case, at least as of late, with all these multifamily potential developments, every one of them are asking for some type of either incentive, abatement, et cetera.
say no.
And the market is saying they're not happening without those things. So if we don't say yes to any of those things in the market today, those projects are likely not to happen.
I mean, that's across the board.
I just wanted to make
Cincinnati,
That
that's,
comment for,
that's
as those
Liberty
come through,
Township,
you see that.
they're asking for abatements for all those things. And most of them. Yeah. So I've not found one right now.
again, not a safeguard on the front end, but something that is certainly
it's a tool.
preventing them from occurring, actually being built. Just to keep that in mind for.
And if I could add one thing, I mean, when I look at these numbers on the first ages, the age percentage, and the age distribution, I think it speaks to the market condition in Monroe is high enough that you have a certain age range before they can afford to come and live in this city without that housing stock. And so you're limiting an entire generation of coming home after college because they can't afford it here. That's one of the first things I see. And then to your point of moratorium on commercial, if you have this different housing stock, places that you want to see will come instead of the ones that you don't want to see. The ones that you don't want to see aren't coming because the housing stock is not here. They tell us that. That's why they're not
Rooftops,
coming.
right? We don't have the
We don't
rooftops.
have the rooftops and the right housing stock for them to come here. That's what the professionals tell us. And so I just want to be, like, these numbers tell a story of you can't afford to live here really until you're about 35. It didn't go on,
Do you know someone under the age of 35 who can afford 300,000 plus?
Well, I understand, but, are you okay with that as city council? And if you are, that's okay. But are you okay with not having housing stock for the younger generation to come back and stay here their entire life? They're going somewhere else living, coming back when they can.
Well, the development behind Clubhouse starts at 300, doesn't it? So I mean, for example, that's something we.
Or whatever that number is, I don't know, but without the apartments, without I'm just saying, there's a generation of younger people who can't come back.
I think it's a good assessment, but I think that also it's asking us to solve for an economy that is beyond most people's grasp. I don't know if anyone's looked at Monroe Terrace's availability lately, but it's something like 836 square foot for $1,300 a month. Who and why can afford that? I'm 42 and wouldn't do it. So no matter what housing type we put in there, it's going to be a challenge for anyone to fill. So as much as we want to say that we need to improve the housing type, I think that it's going to be beyond us to solve it anyway, because the math ain't mathin'.
Got time for Q&A.
All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn the work session.
So moved.
Second, motion second, third, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Got pretty good at slap shot.
Had Cameron here for the first time. Cameron Greenlee.
Oh, okay. That one, right, that one is like, long time no see, Larry.
Yeah.
Yes, how are you, sir?